When I pretended to fall ill, I didn't expect the sickness that followed would be real. The kind that starts in your chest and seeps into your bones, made not of germs, but of truth. It began on a Wednesday morning, the kind that smelled like burnt toast and overbrewed tea. My husband, Daniel, sat across from me at the breakfast table scrolling through his phone, barely touching the eggs I'd made. He was quiet, too quiet, his smile delayed, his eyes half elsewhere. We'd been married 11 years, long enough for silence to have its own language. And that morning it spoke loudly. He used to look up whenever I laughed. Now even my laughter couldn't reach him. For weeks, I had been trying to convince myself that this was just a phase, that the distance between us was the kind that time could close, not the kind that betrayal builds. I told myself men get distracted, marriages get dull, and people change. But deep down, my stomach knew what my heart refused to admit. Daniel was hiding something. I didn't know what yet. But the signs were there, small and sharp. The late nights he said were work calls. The sudden interest in cologne he never used to wear. The way he'd step out to get air, when his phone buzzed. And then the password. New overnight, without a word. Still, I played the part. I smiled, I cooked, I asked how his day went. All while the smell of lies grew thick between us. That morning, as he kissed my cheek on his way out, his lips brushed my skin the way wind touches glass. Without warmth. I stood there by the door long after he left, my reflection trembling faintly in the window pane. I think that's when I decided I couldn't live like that anymore. Not in half-light, not in doubt. I needed to know. But I also knew Daniel was clever. He would never slip up under watch. If I wanted the truth, I had to disappear. Even if just for a while. That's how the plan was born. I told my sister, Alina, first. She was the only person I trusted enough to let in. I'm going to fake it, I whispered over the phone, my voice shaking. Fake what? She asked, alarmed. An illness, I said. Something serious enough that I'll have to stay at the hospital for a few days. I want to see how he reacts. Who shows up? What he does when I'm not home to watch him. There was a long pause. Are you sure you want to go that far? She asked softly. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I'm tired of guessing. I need to know what kind of man I married. Alina sighed, but she agreed to help. She worked as a nurse at a small private clinic, and she knew people who could make the setup look convincing. A fake admission, a hospital bed, some paperwork for appearances. It sounded absurd, maybe even cruel. But betrayal changes the way you define morality. I wasn't looking for justice. I was looking for the truth. The next day, I told Daniel that my doctor had found something in my blood tests. I said they needed to keep me for a few days to run scans. His face barely changed. Just a furrow in his brow, the kind people make out of habit, not concern. Are you serious? He asked, eyes flicking to his phone even as I spoke. I am, I said, searching his face. They're not sure yet. It could be serious. He nodded slowly, setting down his coffee. Well, keep me updated, okay? I'll visit when I can. I've got that project due this week. That was it. No panic. No urgency. No, I'll come with you. Just work. I felt something inside me deflate quietly. I remember thinking, he's already gone. The hospital room was small and cold, smelling faintly of antiseptic and lemon cleaner. Alina had arranged everything. A real bed, real nurses, even in 4-line for show. She promised to check in often, just to make sure I didn't lose my nerve. The first night, I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of machines that weren't really connected to me. It was strangely peaceful, that artificial stillness, like being in a pause between breaths. I told myself it would be worth it if it gave me answers. On the second day, I texted Daniel. They're still running tests. I might need to stay longer. His reply came 10 minutes later. Okay. Hope you feel better soon. No call. No visit. Just a sentence that could have been sent to a colleague. That night, I asked one of the nurses to call my number, to see if he'd pick up. He didn't. He texted back, can't talk now. In a meeting. But I knew his meetings. The kind that lasted until midnight. The kind that left traces of perfume that wasn't mine on his collar. So I asked Alina for one more favor. Can you check where he really is? She hesitated. How far do you want to go with this, Maya? As far as it takes, I said quietly. 2 days later, she called me. Her voice trembled. Maya, he's not at work. Where is he? I whispered. He's been seen at a house on Rosewood Drive. He's been there every evening since you checked in. I didn't speak. I couldn't. My throat felt like sandpaper. She went on hesitantly. It's registered to a woman named Clara Brooks, age 32. The name meant nothing to me. But the number did. I recognized it. I'd seen it flash on his phone months ago, under a contact name, Mr. Cooper, client. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I just stared out the window at the rain sliding down the glass, thinking about how love rots quietly, how lies bloom in silence. I had wanted proof. Now I had direction. But what I didn't know, what no plan could have prepared me for, was that Clara wasn't just the other woman. She was the key to a life Daniel had been living long before me. And by faking my illness, I had accidentally opened a door I might never be able to close again. The next morning, I woke before dawn. The hospital window glowed faintly with the city's early light, gray, blurred, tired. I hadn't slept at all. My body was in that familiar state of exhaustion that feels like floating. Too weary to cry, too alert to rest. Alina came by with coffee and a sympathetic look. You should eat something, she said softly. You're starting to look like a real patient. I managed a dry laugh. Maybe that's fitting. She hesitated before speaking again. Maya, what do you want to do next? I stared at the cup in my hands. I need to see it. With my own eyes. I need to know how far this goes. Alina bit her lip. You're not thinking of. I am. I cut her off gently. If he thinks I'm lying in this hospital bed, then I'm invisible. That's exactly what I need. She sighed, knowing she couldn't stop me once I made up my mind. At least let me drive you. That evening, wearing a hoodie and a mask, I walked out through the back door of the clinic. The nurse on duty gave me a knowing glance but said nothing, a small favor owed to my sister. The cool air outside hit my face like truth. For the first time in days, I felt real. We drove in silence. The closer we got to Rosewood Drive, the heavier the air felt. It was one of those quiet suburban streets where every house looked the same. Manicured lawns, trimmed hedges, life wrapped in polite secrecy. When Alina parked a few houses away, my heart thudded so hard I could hear it in my ears. I watched the lights from the house she had mentioned. The porch glowed warm. A black sedan was parked in the driveway, Daniel's. He wasn't supposed to be there. He'd told me earlier that he was flying out for work. I watched the front door open. A woman stepped out. She was young, maybe early 30s, with soft hair tied back in a simple dress. She carried a baby on her hip. A baby. And then Daniel appeared behind her, holding a diaper bag. He kissed the woman's temple, adjusted the baby's blanket, and followed her down the steps. My chest tightened, my breath caught. For a moment, I thought I might actually collapse. And this time, not from pretending. Alina reached over and touched my hand. Maya. But I couldn't move. I couldn't look away. The baby laughed, that innocent, bubbling sound that used to make me smile once upon a time. Daniel laughed too. It was a sound I hadn't heard in years. He looked alive. He looked happy. Not guilty. Not conflicted. Just home. I whispered, he has another family. The words tasted like blood in my mouth. Alina's eyes filled with tears. Oh my God. He opened the car door for Clara, fastened the baby seat, and drove off. Just like that. Like a husband. Like a father. I sat there for a long time, staring at the house they had just left, at the small wind chime hanging by the porch that danced in the wind. Everything felt surreal. Too quiet, too neat for something so monstrous. When I finally spoke, my voice sounded foreign. I gave him everything. Every year, every compromise, every piece of myself, and he built another life while sleeping beside me. Alina didn't answer. She knew there was nothing she could say that would soften it. That night, I went back to the clinic and lay on the bed again. The fake four still hung beside me, the soft beeping sound looping endlessly like a heartbeat that wasn't mine. I stared at the ceiling until dawn. My mind replayed every memory. Our anniversary dinners, his distracted eyes, his sudden business trips, the missed calls. The pattern was there. I just hadn't wanted to see it. I remembered one particular day, a Sunday about 6 months ago. I'd woken up to find him already dressed, saying he had to meet a client. When I asked if I could come, he smiled and said, "It's boring work stuff, honey." That night, he'd come home smelling faintly of baby powder. I'd laughed, teasing him about holding someone's child at work. He'd smiled, shrugged, and kissed my forehead. Now the memory made my stomach twist. He wasn't holding someone's child. He was holding his child. The next day, I told Alina I was ready to end the charade. "No more hospital," I said. "It's time to confront him." She looked uncertain. "Are you sure? Maybe you should." "No," I said firmly. "If I don't do it now, I'll lose myself completely." She nodded, squeezing my hand. "Then I'll stand with you." Before I left, I took one last look at the sterile white walls of the clinic. I thought about the irony. How this fake illness had led me to discover a real sickness in my life, one I'd been living with for years. By the time I reached home, the air felt heavier than ever. The house smelled faintly of his cologne, and the wilted flowers he'd bought the week before. I sat in the living room, waiting. The clock ticked, the light shifted, the shadows stretched long across the floor. When I finally heard the door open, my pulse quickened. "Hey," he called casually, setting down his keys. "You're home early. I thought you were still at the hospital." I turned to face him. I was. He froze, his smile faltering. "Was. I checked myself out," I said softly. I realized I wasn't really sick. He frowned, clearly uneasy. "What do you mean?" "I mean," I said slowly, "I was never ill. I pretended, because I wanted to see what you'd do when you thought I couldn't watch." His face went pale. "Maya, what?" "I saw you, Daniel," I interrupted. "At Rosewood Drive. With her. With your baby." The silence that followed was absolute. I could hear the clock ticking behind me. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. His eyes darted toward the floor, searching for a lie that might still save him. Finally, he whispered, "You weren't supposed to find out like that." That line, that single sentence, shattered whatever was left of me. Not denial. Not remorse. Just confirmation. "You mean," I said, trembling, "I wasn't supposed to find out at all?" For a moment, the room was so still I could hear my own pulse echoing in my ears. Daniel stood there, the man I'd once believed was my home, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. His hands shook as he rubbed his face. "Maya, please. Just let me explain." I laughed softly, not out of humor, but disbelief. "Explain? You think there's an explanation for having another family?" He exhaled slowly, like someone stepping onto thin ice. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I didn't plan it." My voice cracked. "But you did it, Daniel. You lied to me for years. You let me think I was going crazy, that our marriage was just tired, all while you were living another life." He took a hesitant step toward me. "It started after the miscarriage." I froze. The air left my lungs. He went on, his voice trembling. "You remember how broken you were after that. You shut down, Maya. You wouldn't talk to me. You pushed me away." I swallowed hard. "So you replaced me?" "No," he said quickly. I needed to feel something again. She was there. She listened. One thing led to another." I stared at him. "You're telling me you cheated because I was grieving our child?" He flinched. "It wasn't like that. I didn't mean for it to go that far. And then when she got pregnant, I couldn't abandon her." "So you abandoned me instead." The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. He looked at me with those same brown eyes that used to make me feel safe. And now all I saw was cowardice. "I never stopped loving you," he whispered. I shook my head. "You don't get to say that. You don't love me. You love what I gave you, stability, forgiveness, a place to hide your guilt." Tears blurred my vision. "Love doesn't destroy the person who would have died for you." He looked down ashamed. I thought, maybe if I kept both sides separate, I could keep us all safe. I stepped closer. Safe from what? The truth. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Because deep down, I already knew. He wasn't protecting anyone. He was protecting his comfort, the life he'd built on lies. I sat down slowly, gripping the edge of the table. My voice was quiet now, almost calm. The calm that comes after a storm has already wrecked everything. Does she know about me? He hesitated. She knows I'm married. But I told her it was over. I laughed bitterly. Of course you did. You probably told her I was the villain, the cold wife who stopped loving you. His silence was my confirmation. I wiped my eyes and looked at him one last time. Do you even know what this means, Daniel? You didn't just cheat. You built a family with her. You looked into a child's eyes every day knowing that everything in our house was a lie. He opened his mouth, but I lifted my hand. Don't. I don't want another word. He stood there, helpless, watching the last pieces of us crumble. After a moment I whispered, you should go. Maya, go. When he didn't move, I looked up sharply. Don't make me beg. Finally he picked up his keys and walked toward the door. His footsteps were slow, heavy. When the door clicked shut behind him, the silence that followed wasn't peace. It was the sound of something dying quietly. I sat there for hours, no tears, no anger, just a strange stillness. The kind that comes when you've lost too much to even grieve properly. Alina came by later that night. She took one look at my face and knew. It's over, isn't it? She whispered. I nodded. She sat beside me on the couch, wrapping her arm around my shoulders. You did what you had to do. You saw the truth. I leaned into her and whispered, but the truth feels worse than the lie. She held me tighter. That's because lies are soft. Truth cuts clean. For the next few days I stayed quiet. I didn't eat much, didn't sleep. Every object in that house seemed to hum with a memory. The mug he used, the jacket still hanging by the door, the picture frames that mocked me from the shelves. It wasn't until the third day that I noticed something strange. While packing some of his things into boxes, I found an envelope hidden inside one of his coats. It was sealed, no name, no address. I hesitated, then tore it open. Inside were photographs. Old ones. Of me. Sleeping. Cooking. Laughing. Sitting on the porch, unaware of the camera. But there were others too. Of Clara. And the baby. And one photo, taken from a distance, where both of us were visible in the same frame. Two lives, side by side, separated by a street, maybe a few minutes, but never meant to touch. My hands shook as I flipped through them. Then I saw the last one. A close-up of a hospital door. The nameplate read, Dr. Alina Ward. My blood ran cold. No. That didn't make sense. Why would he have that photo? I felt my stomach twist. I called out softly, Alina? She came from the kitchen, drying her hands on a towel. What's wrong? I held up the photo. Why does he have this? Why would he take a picture of your office door? She froze. Just for a second. But I saw it. That flicker of panic in her eyes. Then too quickly she said, maybe he needed to drop something off once? Ist her. Alina, tell me the truth. She looked away, her lips tightening. Please, I said, voice trembling. Not you too. She finally met my gaze. Her eyes glistened. Maya, there are things I didn't tell you. Things I thought I was protecting you from. My knees went weak. Protecting me from what? Alina took a deep breath. From the fact that you weren't the only one pretending. I felt my throat close up. Her words hung in the air like smoke. Dense, suffocating, impossible to breathe through. What do you mean, Alina? I whispered. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she sank slowly into the chair across from me, rubbing her temples as though the confession itself weighed a ton. Finally, she said quietly, I've known about Clara for almost a year. For a second, I thought I hadn't heard her right. You what? She lifted her eyes, guilt softening her features. I didn't know how to tell you. I found out by accident. Daniel came to my office one evening. He was desperate. He said he needed advice. He was scared that Clara might expose him, that you'd find out. The room tilted. You talked to him? After everything you saw me go through? After all those nights I cried to you about him pulling away. Maya, listen, she said quickly, reaching out a hand. I jerked back. Don't touch me. Her voice cracked. He swore he was ending it. He said he wanted to fix things with you, but Clara was threatening to take the baby and disappear. He came to me for legal advice, not emotional. I thought I was helping you both. I stared at her in disbelief. You lied to me, Alina. You sat in my house, drank my tea, held my hand, and told me to be patient, while you were hiding the fact that my husband had a child with another woman. Tears welled in her eyes. I made a terrible mistake. I thought if I stayed out of it, maybe you two could find your way back to each other. I didn't want to be the one to destroy your marriage. I let out a bitter laugh. Destroy it? Alina, the marriage was already a corpse. You just helped bury it. She flinched at my words. I stood up, pacing the room. My heart was beating so loud it hurt. All this time, I thought I was alone. I thought I was crazy. But you, my best friend, you were part of the lie. Maya. No, my voice broke. You don't get to say my name like that. She started to cry, silently at first. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't want to lose you. I looked at her, this woman who'd seen me at my weakest, who I'd trusted more than anyone. And in that moment, something inside me just snapped. Get out. Her face paled. Please don't. Get out of my house. She stood there for a moment, trembling. Then she nodded, wiping her tears. I understand. When the door closed behind her, the silence that followed was deafening. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house felt haunted, not by ghosts, but by truths too loud to ignore. I sat in the living room, surrounded by those photos, staring at that one image of Alina's office door. The date stamped in the corner caught my eye, March 14th. That was the week Daniel had gone on his business trip. My mind started connecting threads that suddenly made horrifying sense. He hadn't gone to a conference. He'd gone to her. Not Clara. Alina. A wave of nausea hit me. I reached for my phone with shaking hands and opened the old texts Daniel had sent from that week. All those late-night messages about missing me, about wishing I was there. I checked the timestamps. Every single one matched the hours he could have been with her. I grabbed my car keys before I even realized what I was doing. The hospital parking lot was almost empty when I arrived. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I walked down the corridor toward Alina's office. I didn't knock. I just pushed the door open. She was there, alone, sitting behind her desk, head in her hands. When she saw me, her face went pale. Maya. I held up my phone. Tell me it's not true. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Tell me, I demanded. Tell me he didn't sleep with you. Her voice was a whisper. It was one night. I felt my knees go weak. I looked at her, this woman who'd seen me at my weakest, who I'd trusted more than anyone. And in that moment, something inside me just snapped. Get out. Her face paled. Please don't. Get out of my house. She stood there for a moment, trembling. Then she nodded, wiping her tears. I understand. When the door closed behind her, the silence that followed was deafening. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house felt haunted, not by ghosts, but by truths too loud to ignore. I sat in the living room, surrounded by those photos, staring at that one image of Alina's office door. The date stamped in the corner caught my eye, March 14th. That was the week Daniel had gone on his business trip. My mind started connecting threads that suddenly made horrifying sense. He hadn't gone to a conference. He'd gone to her. Not Clara. Alina. When I got home, the sun was beginning to rise. The world outside looked painfully ordinary. Birds singing, light spilling gently across the curtains. I stood there in the doorway, feeling like I'd aged 10 years overnight. Everything was gone. The marriage, the friendship, the illusion of safety. But strangely, there was also a sense of release. The truth had burned everything down. And maybe that was the only way to see what was left standing. Later that day, I opened my laptop. I had an idea. Something quiet. Something powerful. I began typing. A message, a confession, a revelation. Not just for me, but for every woman who'd ever been lied to and silenced. I wrote. My name is Maya. For years, I believed I was loved, protected, and chosen. I was wrong. But what I lost in betrayal, I gained in truth. And this is my story. Then without hesitation, I hit upload. Because if Daniel wanted to hide, I would make sure the whole world saw exactly what he'd done. I didn't expect it to spread the way it did. When I first uploaded my story, a raw, shaky video recorded on my phone, eyes still swollen from crying, I thought maybe a few people would watch. Maybe a handful of women would nod and whisper, "I know how that feels." But within 24 hours, it exploded. The comments came in like waves, thousands of them. Women, men, strangers, people from all walks of life. Some angry, some heartbroken, but all saying the same thing. Thank you for telling the truth. The hashtags #DoubleLifeHusband and #StandWithMaya began trending. And then, Daniel's name started showing up in the news. At first he called nonstop. 32 missed calls. Then 47. Then silence. When he finally texted, it was short. "You've ruined my life." I remember staring at those words, my hands trembling, not with guilt, but with something close to justice. I replied, "No, Daniel. You did that yourself. I just stopped covering for you." I blocked him after that. But the truth doesn't stay quiet. The company where he worked, a respected financial firm, opened an investigation after someone leaked my video to their HR department. Clara's name surfaced too, and so did the fact that he'd been funneling money from joint accounts into a trust for her and their child. Within a week he was suspended. Then came the lawsuit. I didn't want money. I didn't even want revenge. But my lawyer, bless her, said, "If you stay silent again, he wins." So we went forward. During the hearings, Daniel sat across from me. Same calm, polished face now cracking at the edges. He didn't look angry anymore. He looked small. His lawyer tried to paint me as vindictive, unstable, the sick wife who faked her illness. But the irony was almost poetic. I had all the evidence, photos, messages, recordings. And more than that, I had truth. When the judge asked me why I had faked my illness, I said, "Because the only way to see who loves you is to stop pretending you're fine." There was a pause in the courtroom, that quiet kind that lingers longer than it should. And in that silence, I felt powerful again. After the ruling, which granted me full control over our shared assets and a restraining order, I walked out of the courthouse and saw the press waiting. Microphones, cameras, bright lights. They shouted my name. "Maya, how do you feel? Maya, what message do you have for other women in your situation?" I hesitated. Then I said softly, "Don't wait for someone to save you. Save yourself. Even if it means burning down everything you built together." That line ended up on every news site by evening. But the strangest part wasn't the attention, it was the quiet that followed. No more secrets. No more pretending. For the first time in years, I could breathe without wondering who was lying to me. Of course, the loneliness came too. There were nights I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how I'd gone from wife and best friend to widow of my own life. But then I'd remember something. The feeling of waking up and not being afraid. And that made the silence bearable. Clara reached out once. An email. No subject line. Just a few lines of text. "I'm sorry. He lied to me too. I didn't know about you until I was already pregnant. I wanted to tell you, but he threatened to cut me off. I left him after your video. I hope you find peace." I stared at it for a long time. Then I deleted it. Because peace wasn't something anyone could give me. I had to make it myself. As for Alina, she resigned from the hospital a few months later. I heard she moved away. Started over somewhere quiet. She sent me one last message before leaving. "I'll regret what I did for the rest of my life. I hope someday you can forgive me." I never replied. Not because I couldn't, but because some things are better left unanswered. Forgiveness isn't about saying it's okay. It's about letting go of the hope that the past could have been different. And I had finally learned how to do that. It took nearly a year before I started living again, really living. I went back to work at the art gallery part-time. Began volunteering at a women's shelter on weekends. I met women who'd survived worse, who'd been silenced, shamed, and still stood tall. They told me my story gave them courage. And one day, as I was helping a woman fill out a form, she said, "You don't even know me, but your video saved me." I was about to go back to him. I smiled through tears. Then it was worth it. A few months later, I decided to make my channel official, a place where women could tell their own stories. I called it Truth Heals. The first video wasn't about Daniel or Alina. It was about the little things we lose when we love the wrong person. Confidence, laughter, freedom. And how we can find them again. It didn't go viral, but it reached the right people. And that was enough. One evening, as the sun dipped low, I sat by the window with a cup of tea. The city outside hummed quietly, cars, laughter, distant music. Life moving on. I thought about that hospital bed, the beeping machines, the sterile light, the lie I told to find the truth. And for the first time, I didn't feel pain when I remembered it. I felt gratitude. Because that lie saved my life. When people ask me now if I regret exposing him, I say no. I regret waiting so long. And sometimes, when the night is still and the past whispers softly at the edge of my thoughts, I remind myself of this. I didn't lose a husband. I lost a mask. And behind it, I found myself. It's strange how peace arrives. Not with fanfare or fireworks, but quietly, like morning light sneaking through old curtains. A year after everything fell apart, I moved into a small cottage on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, white walls, creaky floors, a garden that smelled of lavender and rain. The first morning I woke up there, it felt almost unreal. No phone buzzing, no tension in the air. Just stillness. For months, I had been surviving. But now, I was ready to start living. I began each day with a walk. There was a narrow trail that curved behind the cottage, leading to a field where the wildflowers grew tall and unruly. I liked it that way, imperfect, like me. Sometimes I'd see an older couple walking hand in hand, or children chasing butterflies, and a small ache would rise in my chest. But I didn't fight it. Healing, I'd learned, wasn't about erasing the ache. It was about learning to carry it gently. I had lost so much, a husband, a friend, the version of myself who believed love meant loyalty. But with every step on that trail, I gained something new. The courage to trust my own voice again. The gallery where I used to work reopened after renovations. When they asked if I'd consider curating a new exhibition, I hesitated. I hadn't been around crowds in so long. But then I thought, maybe it was time. The exhibit was called Restoration. It featured artists who had taken broken things, glass, ceramics, wood, and transformed them into something beautiful again. When I walked through it for the first time, tears welled in my eyes. Every piece seemed to whisper a message. You can't go back to what was, but you can build something new from what remains. That night, I stayed late, rearranging a painting under the right light. And as I stood there, surrounded by all that quiet beauty, I realized I wasn't broken anymore. I was reconstructed. A few weeks later, a letter arrived in my mailbox. The handwriting was familiar. Daniel. For a long time, I just stared at it. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. I wasn't afraid, just curious. Inside was a short note. No grand apology, no excuses. Just this. I've lost everything. I don't expect forgiveness. I hope you're happy now. I never knew what love really was until you stopped giving it. I read it twice, then folded it neatly and placed it back in the envelope. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I simply walked to the fireplace, lit a match, and watched it burn. Because sometimes closure doesn't come from the words we read. It comes from the ones we finally stop needing. Truth Heals, my channel, grew slowly but steadily. Women started sending in their stories, some raw, some painful, all real. I narrated a few myself, but most of the time I just listened. One woman said, "You made me feel seen." Another said, "Your story gave me permission to tell mine." Every time I heard those words, it reminded me why I started. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about redemption. One evening, I recorded a new video. I titled it, "The Lie That Saved My Life." I spoke softly, as if to an old friend. A year ago, I pretended to be sick just to find the truth. But what I didn't know was that the sickness wasn't in my body. It was in my marriage, my silence, my fear. The cure wasn't exposure or revenge. It was honesty. With myself. I used to think the truth would destroy me. But it didn't. It set me free. When I finished recording, I sat in the quiet and realized I no longer missed him. Not the man, not the life, not even the dream. Because I had something better. Myself, unedited. Months later, while running errands, I bumped into someone unexpected, Clara. She looked different. Tired but lighter, carrying a little boy with curly hair and Daniel's unmistakable eyes. We both froze. Then she smiled, hesitant but kind. I didn't expect to see you, she said. I didn't expect to see him, I replied softly, nodding toward her son. She looked down. He's mine now. Daniel hasn't reached out in months. I nodded. You deserve peace too. She met my eyes, cautious, tearful. So do you. For a moment, we just stood there. Two women bound by the same wound, finally meeting in the space beyond anger. Then I reached out and touched her arm. Take care of him. She smiled. I will. And just like that, the last piece of bitterness left me. That night, I lit a single candle in the window, an old habit from my childhood. My mother used to say, a light in the dark means you found your way home. And as the flame flickered, I whispered to myself, I'm home now. Not to a house. Not to a marriage. But to my own heart. In the end, I didn't rebuild my life to prove anyone wrong. I rebuilt it to remember what it means to feel right again. Because betrayal might break you. But truth rebuilds you stronger. When I look back now, I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I'd never pretended to be sick. If I just kept smiling, kept believing, kept patching up the holes in a love that was already sinking. Maybe I would have stayed, half alive, half loved, convincing myself that silence was strength. Maybe I would have grown old beside a stranger, never knowing the truth that was living right next to me. But I did lie. I did pretend. And that one lie became the doorway to every truth I had been too afraid to face. It wasn't easy. The truth burned through everything I thought I knew. It took my home, my marriage, my friendships. It even took the version of me that thought love meant enduring pain. But when the ashes settled, I found something I hadn't seen in years. Myself. I learned that peace doesn't always come with forgiveness. Sometimes, peace comes when you stop asking why, and start deciding what now. If you're listening to this, maybe you're carrying a truth of your own. Maybe you're pretending to be fine, just to keep the world from cracking open. But here's what I learned, and what I hope you remember. You can't heal in the same silence that hurt you. Sometimes you have to set the truth free, even if it costs you everything. Because losing what's false is never a real loss. It's liberation. I don't know who needed to hear this today, but if your heart is whispering that something isn't right, listen to it. If your soul is asking for peace, honor it. You owe no one your quiet suffering. You owe yourself your freedom. Would you have done what I did? Would you have faked an illness to find the truth? Or would you have kept pretending, just to keep the picture perfect? Tell me what you think in the comments below. And if this story touched you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because somewhere out there, another woman needs to hear that it's okay to start over. Sometimes the truth doesn't destroy you. It saves the part of you that still remembers who you are.